Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery, where all of my wonderful gifts, to include my barking dogs, like to come in and share their experiences. I'm sorry, of course, my dogs are barking in this moment. They weren't, they were sleeping. Anyway, we come here and we talk about our recovery journeys, those things that we have found to be extremely effective in our life and what it looked like for us, but also to highlight and help people see that recovery isn't just for the traditional chemical addictions that we all associate with. Mainstream would have us see addiction and recovery as being something for the people that are down, out, ill, poorly functioning, and that need to be removed from their environment so that they can be fixed or healed. And for me and for all of the people that come to work with me, we know that to not be true, that our recovery journeys and our addictions look quite different in that, we don't need to leave our environment. They aren't having us in a place of non-function. Anyway, we're not going to go into that today because today we're talking about our emotions and an importance of being able to identify them effectively so that we know how they're affecting us and how we can actually change and shift those things happening in our life. But today, my guest, I'm so excited. She's just sitting there so quiet and patient, waiting for me to just let her speak. Anyway, I have Miss 𝘔𝘢𝘴𝘵, who happens to be my newest addition to the team. Jen is a teen motivation coach and a parent support coach that is new to the Turning Leaves team, and I'm super excited to be bringing her in here. She is very well versed on all things that we do and practice and learn and teach and eat, sleep, and breathe inside of the organization, whether you're a client or a practitioner. And so I am super excited to introduce Jen to you. Jen, tell everybody a little bit more about you. I mean, you are so much more than just a coach, right? Like, you have an actual life.
A very busy one. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I'm in my little salon right now because I worked this morning and I fit this in here. It's also my office now. I have two daughters, one the age of 2, one the age of 13. Prime ages, both difficult ages, fun ages, interesting ages, active ages. I have a busy husband. We're just all over the place. So learning to live for myself it looked different than my life prior to joining your program in 2020.
It's a long time ago, huh?
I know, it's so weird.
Wow.
I actually just got a text the other day and they were like, "How you doing?" And I was like, wow, I am doing so much better this time of year than I have in the last 7 years. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, because we all have things that happen in our life that kind of derail us. And a lot of times they're life-changing, life-altering, and can be very deep-seated in sadness. It can be deep-seated in loneliness. It can be all kinds of things. And so the healing process or the recovery process from that can be long, and it can be hard, and it can be painful, especially if we don't realize that our emotions are multifaceted. They have layers, they have textures, and they have different functions. And that's, one of the beauties about having somebody that had significant journey, right? You had different seasons in your life, which we all still experience. There are certain times of the year that are more difficult for us than others. And it's how do we approach them and face them? And how do we learn how to do that differently as we grow in life? So taking that time to learn how to say, how would I prefer to be experiencing this? And looking deep inside, which you've done the walk, you've done all of the hard work to say, I don't want to keep experiencing things this way. I want to experience it different. How do I do that? Would that be accurate?
That is 100% accurate. And
right,
change isn't easy. It's those bangs.
It's not easy.
Bang. No, change is not easy. I never thought that I was like afraid of change, because I would always change my hair. I changed my style. I changed my clothes. I changed or my style of clothes, like whatever. I just never thought, but really it was like changing from the inside. And I never even wanted any of that. So it was a roller coaster of a journey, but I wouldn't change it.
I love that you said that, because when I tell my story, people are like, oh gosh, if you had to do over again, what would you do different? I'm like, nothing. Without those experiences, I wouldn't be sitting where I am today. And I'm completely happy, content with my life. I love the way that I experience my environment. I love the way that I experience myself. And I enjoy the work that I put in to make sure that I am received by others the way that I wish to be seen. And so just a lot of work in and of itself, right? I mean, if we're thinking about, oh my gosh, what it looks like when I get irritated, agitated, annoyed, frustrated, bothered, like, how do I come across? Like, how do I see myself when I'm in that state? And then the after effect, which is usually a totally different emotion, right? If you're irritated, agitated, and annoyed, and you exhibit that, and you show up with that, it's usually loud, irrational, maybe some yelling, not listening, not bending, digging your heels in to be right, to be heard, to be seen, because a lot of us feel undervalued, dismissible, not validated. But, so if we come across that way, then what comes next is that secondary emotion is the remorse, the guilt, the shame, having better restraint or control over my own feelings, or, taking it on somebody that didn't have anything to do with it, So, learning that balance is so priceless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Balance has been a key component to all of it, because I wasn't balancing anything. Yeah. There was a lot going on and no balancing was happening. So yes, I've learned a lot. The self-observation has been, I told you in our last session, like, I'm still deep in that. Like, self-awareness is hard at first, because you're like, oh, that was just me that said that. But now, as I'm getting like further into it, I can take accountability for it, and then I can immediately retract it. Like, I know I'm very sarcastic a lot of times, especially when I'm uncomfortable. It's like my defense mechanism, and I can stop myself now and be like, I am working on not being sarcastic, so I do want to pull that back. And before, I would just take it to the grave.
I like that you brought that up. I would take it to the grave, because what is the general response, especially if we are parents of teens or adolescents, is, I'm the adult. I get to be however I want to be. You're the kid. You don't get to be that way, because I'm telling you it's, rude and inappropriate, right? Because if we're leading by the example of sarcastic, and it's an emotional response that we have, it's something that you brought up. I love that you can identify what brings it out in you now too, because that's so important. When I'm uncomfortable, I get sarcastic, or, whatever those different categories are, because categories are so critical. But if we're leading by that example, and that's what our children are seeing when they become adolescents and young adults, and they start exhibiting that, you can't tell them they can't do it, because you're leading by example.
Yeah.
So if you, hello, I just had a full podcast on a full conversation on somebody else's podcast about absolutely 100% about that, about as parents, if we're leading by the example that every day at the end of the day, when we're stressed out because we're burning the candle at both ends, so we come home and we, drink a bottle of wine as our way to unwind, but we're telling our kids not to drink when they're experiencing peer pressure. Hello, you're leading by that example, that it is a coping mechanism. Even if you don't say out loud to them, mom's stressed out, dad's stressed out, I've got to have a drink, they can still pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with food. If you're constantly on a diet and you're constantly watching your weight and you're constantly saying things out loud, like, oh my God, I'm fat, I need to exercise, or whatever that is, guess who's listening? I can guarantee you, I can tie my anorexia back to the way that I observed my mom and the way that she talked about food. It was just her and I after my dad died. It would be, I got to eat healthier, I got to watch my figure, yada, yada. So we would share a baked potato, like share one baked potato. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it was modeled for me how to restrict. And so it's absolutely how we lead. So if we're knee jerk and reactive and we're snappy, guess what? Guess what attitude those teenagers are going to pick up? They're going to have it anyway, but now it's going to be even more difficult for you to redirect, because it's exactly how you're operating in your life. Right.
Well, they see it as a communication. That's how you're talking to them. So then they're going to talk to you that way.
Mm-hmm. Right. And everybody else, by the way, their teachers, their coaches, their friends' parents.
Yeah.
Mortifying. How mortifying.
That is one of the, that's why I'm so drawn to the teen motivation and stuff, because nobody taught any of this to me when I was younger. And I played sports and all this stuff, and I had a bad attitude and I had a temper. And I did have a coach that would make me run if I talked back or whatever, but that never taught me. I just would be like, oh, I'm going for a run. And I didn't even hate running. So it wasn't really a punishment for me. And I lost a lot of big opportunities because I didn't know how to regulate my emotions. And then the patterns just developed and got worse and worse and worse as I branched out to new relationships, friendships, relationships with people as I got older. And, some of them ended horribly because of the way I reacted to things. And thinking back, it's like, well, that wasn't even necessary. It wasn't even a big deal, but it's just overlooked so much, I feel like, and
it is
undervalued.
It is. We don't teach emotional intelligence. And I think there is a large part because, sure, brain development happens, in stages, and the part that that we need for reasoning generally doesn't develop until young adulthood or mid-20s to late 20s. However, teens can be taught things like self-soothing tactics that are effective and appropriate. They can learn impulse control. Everything doesn't have to be about instant gratification. Although we live in a world that's, very, you get a text, you got to answer it. Literally, my 13-year-old grandson, it's like if he gets a text from his girlfriend, he feels like he has to answer it because otherwise she's going to get mad. And we've got to teach them to be better about that. I'm spending time with my family right now. I can let you know in the morning, hey, I'm going to be spending time with my family from here to here. I'll get back to you later. There's so many attachment things that we really need to be focused on guiding the children to independence, right? So we want to be raising them to be self-sufficient, independent young amoebas. And they can't do that if they stay dependent, right? We're all born in the external locus of control because we need to have, we need to cry to be fed. We need to cry to get our diaper changed. We have to, we rely on our parents. But as we can start walking and talking and expressing ourselves and dressing ourselves and brushing our own teeth and making our own sandwiches, etc., parents really need to be working on allowing for that autonomy to naturally be unfolding. And that's the even more important piece of watching how we're eating. Because if we act on every event in an emotionally reactive way, that's how we're leading, instead of saying, let me sit with this and think through how I really think and feel about it so that I can formulate a true response. Like even doing that with your kid is going to teach them patience, because you're not just saying no to every question they ask, because you can't be bothered to actually sit and maybe even ask some questions as to why whatever it is important to them. Because we say no way much. I think no should be safe for the big stuff. But slowing the pace of everything down, all of our communication, like, ooh, my initial instinct is to say, no, I don't like the idea of you going wherever this is or being friends with whoever that is, or I don't like the way that I'm seeing your relationship, right? The way that I'm experiencing it, like it makes me uncomfortable. But instead of making rigid rules for them to follow and just telling them, no, you can't do that, sit down and have a conversation about why it's important to them and why we think, feel, believe the way that you do. Half we don't even know because we don't give it enough time.
Yeah. Yeah. The art of pause has been a complete game changer. Especially with a toddler and a teen, I'm pretty sure you were the one that told me I don't have to answer right away. You were like, you could be like, let me get back to you on that. And ever since you told me that, I do that with my teen a lot. Like she'll ask me, I drive back and forth a lot and all over the place. And she wanted to come up here to watch a movie for the third time, the same movie for the third time. And I was like, I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes. I need a moment. I'll get back to you. And then I went through everything in my head and I was like, I just need a break from driving. Like, I just can't shuttle her today. So then that was my answer, going back to her. And I think even because she knew I took the time to consider everything, she was even more receptive to the answer no. She didn't give me like the usual teen response,
I do.
She was like, oh, okay, like no problem. And then she just like went, and she actually went in and cleaned her room, which, I mean, if you're that bored, I know. I didn't even tell her to.
Wow. That's crazy.
I know. But they do notice those, like they might not notice it wholeheartedly, like the whole thought process that you go into it, they're not, but that little bit, it means a lot to them.
Yes. And that's why, we have to, make sure that we do things age appropriate and in a language and in terminology that they can understand.
Yeah.
We can't have the same conversation with them and expect for them to understand, like mom's regulating her emotions, or let me go identify which emotion is primary and which one secondary so that I know which one to focus on. No, there's a whole different approach when we're talking about teens, adolescents, young adults, because there are very different developmental stages, and so we always need to make sure that we can deliver our message in a fashion that they can understand and comprehend. But there are ways of doing that, which is the beauty of the wonderful practice that you're going to be bringing to the table is that ability to help the entire unit speak the same language and understand each other, and therefore be able to function at a much better level, because there are effective ways to teach adolescents emotional intelligence. There are effective ways to help them learn what their esteem needs are. There are effective ways to teach them how to articulate what they are actually feeling, because you go ask them, why are you so edgy,
Crabby.
angry today? Why are you so crabby? What's going on? And you get the surface thing, right? Like it's out, I don't know, what is a complaint these days? I guess for adolescents, we'd have, I'm PMSing. Well, okay, but that's not the real emotion. That's a physical symptom, right? So, which sure, but if there wasn't a prompting event to make you all emotional about it, you would have just been physically uncomfortable. But so sure, your emotional reactivity might be heightened, but what was it that prompted it to begin with? So
even telling her sometimes she gets, worked up and her emotions are so big, and I will tell her like, okay, I'm going to need you to pause, take a deep breath, take a moment, and just really think about what it is that's making you feel this way, because we're not going to let this discussion go. And we don't have a whole lot of conversations that are to that magnitude, but I don't look the other way just because she says, oh, nothing.
Right. Well, because it's important that they can describe what happened. It's important we can all describe what happened. Like if you're driving down the freeway and you're going to work and the guy behind you's tailgating you, you have some decisions to make here. Like, how do I want to show up in this situation? Do I want to tap my brakes, show him my bumper, and then as he's going past me, because he inevitably will be, should we have some road rage at the same time? Like, is that how I want to handle this? And then get to the office and be like, oh my God, you'd never believe what this guy did to me on the way. And so now we're talking about it after we get to work. And then we're still talking about it at lunchtime around the cooler, on lunch break. And then when we get home at night, we're still telling our spouse about it, when it was literally a split-second event in our life that we drag with us throughout the day and allow it to infect the rest of everything that happens. And so sure, when we get to the end of our day, we're spiraling stress baskets that are just irritated and agitated with everything, because we're just throwing that same energy at everything else we do going forward. Instead of, hey, this guy's tailgating me. Who? It's not for me to judge. It's not even for me to understand. I'm just going to move out of the way. They're clearly in a bigger hurry than I am. Let them go by, wish them well, because we never know what. Maybe their kid just got hit by a train. They're trying to get to the emergency room. Or they stayed up too late the night before partying and they're late for a meeting. None of it's our business. It's their life. It gets to look, feel, be however they want it to. We get to choose how we experience it. And by just letting it rush by as quick as it is, we can allow those emotions to go a lot quicker.
I will say that was like the first lesson that I learned, and it wasn't easy. But it makes my driving a lot more peaceful now. Sometimes I'm like, how did I get here so fast? Like there was no problem, but there was like traffic, but there was no cussing and screaming and yelling, and my head's not going to explode.
If you're not operating from a place of urgency, you're just operating inside of your life. You know now that there are things that you cannot control, and that the only thing that you truly can control is you and how you engage in living. It's all up to you. You get to choose to be irritated, agitated, annoyed frustrated, bothered because there's traffic and try, weaving in and out of traffic or whatever, or I'm going to be 5 minutes late. Nothing I can do about it.
The greatest lesson is the choice that you do have the choice, because I know in the beginning, and even sometimes now I unintentionally say it, but like I always say like, or I used to always say, they made me feel that you made me feel. And now I like say all the time, well, I had to say it out loud so that my brain could hear it, but I'm like, oh, that's a them problem. That has nothing to do with me. And the level of release that I have from that, it's not my problem. I mean, even with my husband, who I love, but he does have a stressful job. He does come home angry, and I'm like, oh, that's a you thing. I'm gonna let you sit over there. I'm gonna go over here, and you let me know when you're ready to interact.
People need space.
Yeah.
And so it's, once we engage in it, once we insert ourselves into their whatever, then we're inviting ourselves to join their frustration. Because if you can see somebody is stressed or whatever, why go poking the bear? Because you're just saying, oh, let me see if I can let some of that come hit me in the face. I want some of that. Give me it. That's great. Instead of just saying, oh, let me give you a minute. Hopefully they learn to start taking their minutes before they walk in the door. I know I do a lot of work with my male population on this specific topic. One that rings most, I think, relatable is a client of mine that worked for FedEx. And every day, they have stressful jobs. They're driving all day. They got to deal with every person on the road, and, the pace. So I had to actually coach him to, as soon as he clocked out, right, that pace all the way home, the drive all the way home was the effort was to slow that pace down, because you get conditioned to always be go, 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 go. And that's high energy, high vibration. And it's real hard to slow that down. And if you're going home to a house full of 3, 4, 5 kids, and it might be semi-chaotic because they're all school-age children, and right, and you're going to open the door and you're going to be greeted by all of them and yada, yada, yada. You got to slow it down, the pace down, but you also have to start unpacking all of the things, the stressors of the day before you open the door. Because, it would be open the door and then see the socks and shoes on the floor, get pissed off, start yelling, the backpacks on the floor, get pissed off, start yelling, instead of walking through the door and being, hi, I'm home, and giving the kids the hey, daddy, you're home that they want, and acknowledging your wife and giving that to them. So we worked on you just smiling and saying all the hellos with big grins and being happy to see them, just picking up all of this stuff while he was going, dumping it at the foot of the stairs. And then after dinner, when everybody's getting ready to wind down, on your way to your room, don't forget to pick up your stuff at the bottom of the stairs. Right now, we don't have an argument. Everybody's stuff's right there. They can pick it up, they can go, but we don't have to berate everybody. They know that it's not supposed to go where it goes. But guess what? When they come home from school, they also need a release. So they just put things down. Over time, they will develop that ability to just not flop their stuff everywhere. But berating them about it every day and ruining your first 5 minutes home is not the way to go. Anyway, that was a sermon. Sorry about that. But it's just so important that we look at giving everybody inside the household that space, like being observant. Wow, you seem like something's really kind of bugging you. Do you want to talk about it, or should I just leave you alone? Ask before you start saying something.
Yeah. That is
worry.
Yeah, that's a new thing that I'm really working on.
It's a practice. We have to always work on it.
because I really think everybody wants my opinion all the time. They do not.
Well, okay, so here's the valuable piece in that. I'd like to think that my opinion is valuable enough for everybody to hear it, but I don't want to waste my valuable opinion. I didn't used to think that my thoughts, feelings, and opinions were seen as not having any value or holding any validity. Now that I know otherwise, I'm much more protective of it. Because now I'm like, I don't want to talk over you. I don't want you to tell me how much you disagree with me, yada, yada, yada. I just want to know, are you open to receiving an alternate perspective or a different perception or, some other, just an alternate idea. And if you're not, cool beans, I'm going to keep it to myself. Because if you try forcing it on somebody that doesn't want to hear it, receive it, or even consider it, or even collaborate, or just have a conversation, then they're actually going to be jading and tainting your intellectual property. Right? I don't want somebody muddying my stuff.
I don't want to turn them away from the idea that if the doors open a little bit and I'm forcing my opinion on them, I don't want them to slam the door because for whatever reason, my opinion was different or they didn't like what I said or whatever. I'm really trying to wait for that invite or ask for if it's wanted or, just the cues to know that it's wanted and going to be received. Whereas before I was like, no, you're going to hear, and I'm going to stick my heels in the ground and I'm going to yell from the top of my lungs. And what's funny too is I am a loud person in general, just because I get excited, but I just don't think I don't think I'm as loud as I used to be. I am still loud, but not in the same way as I used to be before. I just used to be wild and loud and reckless, and I still am fun, but I've just gained more control over the emotions, and it just really is a good feeling. It's not perfect all the time. There are those prompting things that make me cringe or I'm reactive to, but I'm getting closer to that 80%.
I love that you said that, because nobody's perfect. Dietary practices aren't perfect, and you just strive to be good, to eat healthy 80% of the time. That other 20% of the time isn't going to hold any weight or bearing, and then we don't feel so punished and restricted. If you can't have a piece of cake on a Saturday when you've eaten well all week long, the problem, but we're all human beings. We all have emotions. I don't get derailed by much. It's very, very difficult to get what we'll call a rise out of me. That is noticeable. It happens inside, but then, I have to consider my audience. There's different age groups, right? You look at the young adults, college age, they get super passionate about their things, and it's just passion and passion and it's passion. It gets louder and it gets louder and it gets louder. And there's no inserting there's no conversing. It's just at that time, they're just blowing, whatever it is that they need to be talking about. And it's more of, they need to be heard, and they're not interested in somebody trying to give an alternate opinion. But knowing that if we strive to 80% of the time show up the way that we prefer to see ourselves, and then, excuse the 10 to 20% of the time where we're not, on top of self-observation and looking at, okay, wait, I feel this emotion coming up, starting to get uncomfortable with this conversation. I'm not exactly sure. I want to look at what is that emotional reactivity that is coming up for me. What's really driving that? Is it the subject content? Is it how it's presented? Is it the view and opinion of the person, delivering whatever it is? Taking a look at that, because we live in a world with a lot of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we're all much better served if we kind of respect that rule. I mean, we're not all, I don't know, there's just personal things in life, right? Like my spirituality is personal to me. You don't see me walking around talking about my religious beliefs. They're mine. They're personal. I don't need to talk about them. I don't need to share them with you, and I don't need to, share them with other people. And I certainly don't need to try to sway somebody to my way of believing. Like, it's personal. Leave it personal. There's some things that are left unsaid.
Unless you're invited to be whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a key component to life that has been missed in the teaching and upbringing of everything. So I love that you taught me it.
Well, you did the majority of the work yourself, because you had to interpret it in a way that served you in your life. So walking beside you, great honor, and giving the ideas, the tips, the tactics, the psychological skill sets that are beneficial is great, but you still have to physically do the work. And I think it's a big accomplishment when we can say, you know what? I learned how to express my emotions and communicate my thoughts, feelings, emotions, opinions, and beliefs effectively. I didn't change who I am. I didn't change my views and opinions. I just learned how to express them in a way that's receivable by a much broader audience, and allows me to see myself with an all new level of self-respect, which allows me to then interpret my behavior differently. It allows me to interpret the behavior of others differently.
I keep thinking about when I like first started, and then you've asked a couple times, like, show the picture of what you want to be seen as, and like how my images have changed so different over the last 2.5 years. It's just like, it's such the longest, shortest road ever, but I wish I would have road mapped it more, tracked it more, just so that I could, it's like progress pictures or before and after pictures of hair or any of that stuff. Like just the start to finish, like I only have like a mental picture, but I know what that journey looks like. And if I could just open my brain so you could see it. Well, you saw the pictures, but it's just so funny that how you grow and change but still say the same. You're just unlocking a different side of you.
That's why it's so hard to articulate, like, what does it truly feel like to be on the journey? What is it, because it is such a slow, subtle, sometimes difficult journey. Sometimes it's real hard. But so the shifts, because it's not even a full like metamorphosis of any kind. I mean, it is over time. It becomes very hard when I ask clients sometimes, share with me your favorite outcome. And they're like, I got nothing. Right? Like, I got nothing other than how I feel living my life right now versus how I felt living my life before.
Man, there's so many times where it's like, I keep saying it like I leveled up. I would have like this self-awareness moment, or something would happen and it would be just normal to everybody else, but it'd be so profound in my head, and my eyes would get big and nobody else would be noticing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody else saw that. But it's because it lives within me, and it's just me on just like another plane. It's just different. I have different eyes. I'm hearing with a different filter. I'm listening as a learner, not a judger.
I'm right with you, because I'm 9 years on the journey, right? So I just keep, like you said, leveling up.
Yeah, it's
the longer you stay with it, it's a way of living. So the longer you continue living this way, there's nothing else that can happen other than continued personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
If it becomes your way of living. I'm sure there's plenty of people that come in, they get that fix that they need, whatever that one thing was that was, really creating an issue in their life. And that's fine too. Sure, there's people that come in and work with me for 12 weeks and they go. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There are others that hang out for longer. There are others that, believe in it and are now doing other great things like you. So it's all a choice. It's a choice. What do I want my life to look like, feel like, be like? And for people like us, we are always striving to grow and learn.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing.
Oh my gosh. I could probably talk to you for 100 years. And I know that we are very conditioned to spend an hour to an hour and a half with each other. But I'm sure that our listeners don't want to hear us go into what might resemble more of a session than an actual conversation. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences with, your journey in getting to know your emotions and how do you take a look at that reactivity and prompting events and really change and shift them. I know that the people in your life actually witness those differences. You share it with me all the time. So, thank you for being an amazing walking example. And thank you even more for being somebody that cares so deeply about our younger generation. And really just, stepping into your passion to lead by good example and to help them come to what we have come to much sooner in life so that they don't have to struggle.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for leading me there.
Well, here we are walking side by side. Anyway, again, I do totally appreciate it. Thank you so much. I wish we could continue, but it's 12:43. So I'm going to shut down the live, everybody. Please feel free to share. The replay will be on YouTube. You can hit Jen up. I will be dropping my contact information, and Jen can put her contact information in the comments below so that you can know how to reach out to either one of us. We're both here. Anyway, see you next week.